Big news from the Crypto Basic. Trump's Truth Social is filing for a blue chip crypto ETF. And guess what? It includes XRP. That's right, folks. A company owned by the former president is planning to launch a multi-coin ETF, and XRP is one of the featured assets. Once this gets approved, and honestly, it feels like it's just a matter of time, customers will be able to invest in the ETF to gain exposure to XRP. Here's how it works. Trump's company will actually purchase XRP along with the other coins in the fund to back the ETF. This means real changes to XRP supply and demand dynamics are on the horizon. If this isn't a vote of confidence, seriously, what is? And the best part, they're not the only ones jumping on this, which makes it even more exciting. Plus, let's not forget how scarce XRP already is. Think about it. XRP hit an all-time high of $3.40 earlier this year, and that was with less than 1% of the world's population ever holding it. That's all it took for it to climb that high. Now, just imagine what could happen as even more money starts flowing in. And here's the kicker. This doesn't even include something I'm almost 100% certain is coming: multiple spot XRP ETFs. Yep, those are likely on the way too, maybe even before this bull run wraps up. Before we dive in, I just want to be upfront. I don't have a financial background, and this isn't financial advice, so please don't make any buying or selling decisions based on what I share here. With that out of the way, let's jump into it. The block covered this story, and here's what they said. Truth Social, part of Trump Media and Technology Group, has filed an S-1 registration with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission for something pretty interesting: a crypto blue chip exchange traded fund. Yep, crypto blue chip is the term they're using. Basically, they're putting XRP in the same category as the OG cryptos, the ones that have already made it big. These are the safe bets, not the penny stocks. Think of them as the reliable, established players in the crypto world that have already proven their success. They're already here. They don't need to prove anything. That's what a crypto blue chip is all about. And honestly, I've been saying this for a while now. We don't need to wonder if XRP is going to make it. It already has. XRP has made it. It's a done deal. Now it's just about scaling and doing even more of what it's already doing. The hard part is over. XRP has arrived, period. It's happening, right? The piece goes on to explain that if approved, the trust's assets will mainly include Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, and Kronos, the native cryptocurrency of the Kronos blockchain, which is tied to the Crypto.com ecosystem. I have to admit, I'm not super familiar with Kronos. I don't have an account with Crypto.com, but I did some digging, and it turns out the coin is ranked 34 in market cap. If you're building a crypto blue chip portfolio, that one definitely stands out. Not throwing shade here. I don't know much about it. If we're talking blue chip, wouldn't you think it'd stick to the top 10? I mean, they probably have their reasons, and I'm not saying it doesn't make sense for what they're doing. It's just the name that threw me off a bit. Honestly, it's really about the name. When they say crypto blue chip, I was like, oh, okay, that's how we're categorizing this. Everyone knows what blue chip usually means. So it just made me stop and think for a second. So this is something I've noticed, and I think it's frustrated some people in the community, but honestly, not so much me. XRP has the smallest weighting out of all these coins, which I think is a bit ridiculous. Personally, I believe XRP is going to keep massively outperforming from here on out. Here's how the weighting breaks down. 70% of the funds go to Bitcoin, 15% to ETH, 8% to Solana, 15% to Kronos, and just 2% to XRP. Now, I get it. Bitcoin and Ethereum being weighted higher than XRP makes sense. That's pretty standard. But here's the thing. I genuinely believe XRP is going to outperform Bitcoin and Ethereum by a huge margin. It's already doing it this market cycle, and by the time the cycle ends, it's going to be even more obvious. I get it. If a fund decides to focus more heavily on Bitcoin and Ethereum because they have higher market caps, that makes sense. When people want exposure to crypto, ranking by market cap feels like a logical approach. I can totally understand that. No problem there. But seeing XRP weighted at just 2%, that made me pause for a moment. Even so, let's look at the bigger picture. There are thousands of coins out there that could have been included, and XRP still made the list. So if you're feeling a little disappointed about the 2%, I'd say, so sweat it. I'm honestly just happy to see XRP on the list at all. The way it's being recognized, wow, what a difference a year makes, right? The way things are treated now compared to then is night and day. Honestly, I'm convinced it's almost guaranteed this thing is going to get approved. And once it does, the amount of money flowing into XRP over the coming years and decades is going to be massive. It's hard to predict the exact numbers, but trust me, it's going to be staggering. Fast forward 10 or 20 years from now, and when we have all the data, I'll definitely look back on this moment. If I'm still running this YouTube channel, fingers crossed, you can bet I'll remind everyone how we talked about it way back in 2025 before we had flying cars everywhere. I'll say, remember when we saw the potential for all this money flowing into XRP? Look at it now. Is going to make such a huge difference in XRP's value, far beyond what it would have been otherwise. And hey, this isn't the only fun, by the way. Here's an interesting update. The SEC recently paused Grayscale's plan to convert their large cap fund, which includes XRP, into an ETF. This happened just a day after it got staff approval. At first glance, the headline might sound a bit negative, but let's break it down. Grayscale is moving forward with the conversion process, and the SEC has acknowledged it. However, the next day, they hit the pause button. From what we're hearing, this isn't about rejecting the idea. It seems more like the SEC is working on putting a proper approval structure in place for these kinds of requests before moving ahead. I've touched on this before, so I won't dive too deep, but overall, it feels like more of a procedural step than anything else. So the theory is that's why it got paused, not because they don't want it to happen. This administration is clearly pro-crypto, which now seems to include the SEC too. And let's not forget SEC Chair Paul Atkins. What a relief to have him in charge instead of, well, let's just say not Gary Gensler. Honestly, it's so refreshing to say SEC Chair Paul Atkins instead. Anyway, this is going to get approved eventually. And when it does, it's likely we'll see even more money flowing into XRP. It's on top of everything else that's already happening. Just think about how quickly funds can move. It's a big deal. This is why all of this is so significant. Nate Grouchy, president of the ETF Story, shared some big news. The iShares Bitcoin ETF just hit a huge milestone, holding over 700,000 Bitcoin. Let that sink in. 700,000 Bitcoin in just 18 months. That's over 3% of Bitcoin's total maximum supply of 21 million. This is exactly the kind of thing we'll see with XRP when XRP ETFs roll out. Keep in mind, this is just one ETF. Granted, it's iShares, so it's BlackRock, the biggest player, but the same kind of massive growth could happen with XRP. Now, I know some people see XRP's 100 billion max supply and think that's way too much, but let's be real, it's not as much as it sounds. Once you dive into the details, it's clear there's not that much XRP out there. Did you know that if you could evenly distribute all the XRP that will ever exist across the world's population, not that this is actually possible, each person would only have about 11 or 12 XRP? Crazy, right? That's just how the math works out. Feel free to double check the numbers yourself, but it's right around 11 or 12 XRP per person. So if you've got more than that, congrats. You've already got more than your fair share. It's wild to think about, especially since most people have no idea. Most people don't realize this, but there really isn't that much XRP out there. So when investment opportunities open up and it becomes easier for people to invest in XRP, what do you think will happen? It's going to be absolutely wild. Oh, and I've got to share this with you. There are some seriously dedicated long-term holders out there. Honestly, this should give you some optimism because we're likely about to witness a massive blow off top to wrap up this market cycle. Here's a cool update from chart analyst Credible Crypto featuring the Bitcoin long-term holder supply chart. The black line represents Bitcoin's price and the blue line shows the long-term holder supply. Now, here's the interesting part. Over 80% of all Bitcoin that will ever exist is currently being held or hollowed. That's huge. In Bitcoin's 15-year history, there have only been two other times this percentage was higher. One at $43,000, right before Bitcoin surged by $30,000, hit $73,000. Two at $58,000, jumped to $105,000. Plus, if you're looking at the chart, it's even easier to see how these trends played out. And if we're interpreting things correctly, this data lines up around the end of 2023. Back then, there was a lot of debate about whether Bitcoin would ever hit a new all-time high. Some people weren't convinced at all. But guess what? It happened. We reached this peak where the number of long-term holders was the highest it's ever been. And yep, it's still a record to this day. Here's the thing. When you've got that many long-term holders sitting on gains, it's only a matter of time before they decide to take some profits. And that's exactly what went down. If you look at the chart, you'll notice the black line, Bitcoin's price, went up, while the blue line, long-term holders, went down. What does that mean? As Bitcoin's price shot up, those long-term holders who had bought in at much lower prices saw an opportunity to cash out. Makes sense, right? The price got so high, they thought, all right, time to take some profits. So here's what happened with long-term Bitcoin holders. It's pretty fascinating. As Bitcoin's price dropped, those holders gradually started selling off more and more as the price climbed toward its all-time high. That peak came at the end of 2023 into early 2024. It's just how people behave. It's all in the data. And guess what? It happened again. Take a look at 2024. Bitcoin hit $58,000 and then made a big leap to $106,000. During this rise, long-term holders who had been building up their supply started selling off steadily, sell, until their holdings hit a low point going into 2025. But here's the interesting part. Since then, they've been buying back in. They bought the dip. They've been buying consistently, and they're rebuilding their positions. Long-term holders are back in action, and honestly, I don't think they're going to get caught off guard this time. Here's what I think will happen. Bitcoin is set to take off like crazy, and XRP, along with other altcoins, will follow right behind it. Get ready for an epic alt season. It's going to be wild. If you look at the chart, it tells a familiar story. This pattern goes all the way back to late 2020 and early 2021, and we're seeing the same setup now. When Bitcoin starts climbing, we often see the same pattern play out. Check this out. The blue line drops as long-term holders start selling. It's a tale as old as time, right? And guess what? It looks like we're about to see it happen again. Credible Crypto puts it perfectly. When the majority of Bitcoin's circulating supply ends up in the hands of diamond hands, even a hint of new demand can push prices up fast. Right now, that excess supply has shifted back to long-term holders, and with Bitcoin treasury companies leading the charge, the next big move seems just around the corner. This next surge could be even bigger than the last two. Think $50,000 and beyond. Who's ready for $150,000 Bitcoin? Raise his hand. I know I am. Let's hope we get there soon. And hey, some believe it could go even higher. We'll see what happens. I'm not here to make predictions. I really believe there's still potential for one last big parabolic surge ahead. Sure, things might eventually cool off, but not before alt season hits and XRP reaches a new all-time high during price discovery. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised at all if XRP hits double digits this market cycle. In fact, I'd almost expect it. The best is yet to come. Remember, XRP is a scarce asset. When demand spikes, wild price surges can happen because, let's face it, there just isn't that much XRP to go around. It's a whole new world out there. XRP now has legal clarity, and America is officially leaning pro-crypto. Since November, after that big shift, we've seen a massive surge of money flowing into crypto, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. Here's the thing. People like us, early adopters, were here before the big institutions and companies jumped in. And honestly, good for us. It's exciting to know we were ahead of the curve. But for most people, they'll join the crypto space later, after the big players are already in. And that's okay. There's still so much opportunity ahead. But hey, let's take a moment to appreciate that we got here first. We've had more opportunities than others, and those opportunities have created an incredible multiplier effect. Honestly, this is one of the craziest financial opportunities in history, possibly the biggest ever for humanity. What a time to be alive, right? And now we have a company backed by the President of the United States that's supporting XRP. How amazing is that? I'll take it. This is such a huge shift compared to what we've dealt with over the past 5 years. I mean, yes, please. I'll gladly take more of this kind of progress. Of course, just a friendly reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. Please don't make any buying or selling decisions based solely on what I say. That wouldn't be a great idea.